Nothing is hurt by it, my life is not destroyed by it. Sometimes I fall down and I stand up. And so that's what I hope that in learning these steps and thinking about these steps, you realize you really are in control of your mindset. The first step is you have to know they exist. You have to know that what you observe with your eyes that goes into your head needs to be fueled by something. Some people say that emotions fuel feelings. So an emotion bubbles up. Oh, I feel embarrassed. So do you feed that embarrassment with shame and guilt and sadness? Or do you fuel that embarrassment with, I'll laugh at myself and I'll move on? Because whatever you choose to feed, whatever you choose to actively engage with and build is what is going to be built. How many people are familiar with basics of brain chemistry building stuff? You're all looking at me like, what do you mean? That's fair. If I say the word synapses, does that mean anything to anyone? Okay, so synapses. Do anybody who want this picture have this picture? You don't have to have this picture because you can probably draw better. But in our brains, there are these things called synapses. So here's, interesting, that's actually one of the better brains that I've drawn. And it's a little wrinkly, so pretend that it's wrinkly, because what's going on under the surface of your wrinkly brain is a bunch of little roads. And these roads get you places. And as I was just talking about the thoughts that you have that you feed live, that's what this is. Synapses are thought patterns. So if you think a thought often enough, you build a really strong road. So when I fall down, I say, oh, I'm such a klutz, I'm such an awful person, and life is horrible and awful, and la, 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 la. I build this huge clump that tells me that I'm horrible and I'm awful. If, instead, so then that's there. That's part of the healing process. I accept that at some point something happened to me that caused me to feel that way. I thank the emotions for being there, and I gesture them on their way. And I decide, you know what? I'm going to build a new road. So I'm going to build a new road over there. And that new road says that I'm wonderful, and I'm awesome, and I'm a good person, and just maybe sometimes I fall down, but that's fine. And so in that thought, in that time, between 1 and 2, I have a choice. Am I going to feed that synapses, or am I going to feed that synapses? And so the tools that I'm going to give you today are what will help you build a new road, are going to be what helps you to actually do it. But before we go there, the best way to learn is to teach. So I want you to choose 30 seconds. I want you to condense down in 30 seconds something that you learned, and I want you to teach someone in here what you learned. You don't have to do that, but I can promise you're going to retain it better, and you're going to have better questions to ask me in 2 minutes if you do that. So, and you can choose whatever you've learned from anything that I've said, but I just want you to think about something. So I'll give you 2 minutes to figure out what it is you want to teach someone, and then you'll each have 2 minutes to teach someone what you learned. And if you really don't want to go there, that's fine. I gave you a pen and paper, write it down. Write out what you learned and engage with what you learned, okay? You have 2 minutes. So after going through those things, what questions do you have? I'm sure that there's at least one. If you don't, though, that's fine too. I'm not an impatient soul or anything. Yes?
When we're talking about being embarrassed and having fear in our life and how it runs our lives, or even when it's not in our conscious mind, and some of these experiences we shared still are in our conscious mind, but what can we do?
Ooh, I love that question.
What can we do to get over that hurt and move on past that fear and embarrassment?
That's a good question. So, on one of the papers that you'll see in a little bit is this phrase called, it's not a not a phrase, it's an acronym. It's called FADES. Now, FADES is frustration, and this will answer your question in just a second. It's really hard writing sideways, in case you were wondering. That's fine. You know, I'm going to do this differently because it will make my life way easier in the end. Okay, frustration, anger, disappointment, embarrassment, and sadness.
You got to shortly share.
Oh, good call, thank you. I'll turn this way instead. Okay, so these are sort of basic human emotions that are just sort of ingrained inside of us. These are the things that our conscious mind reaches for when something embarrassing happens.
Yeah.
Other way? Okay. So when something happens to us, our brain generally reaches for one of those things and is immediately trying to feed what just happened to us with those things. And so when something happens, when something triggers that emotion, that feeling of embarrassment, disappointment, anger, frustration, or sadness, you sit down and you get a piece of paper in front of you and get a really good writing pen. In You've Got Mail, she talks, well, sorry, not You've Got Mail, it's Anne of Green Gables. She talks about how when her pen is just right, the nub of her pen is just right, she can write love letters. Get a good pen like that because you are essentially writing a love letter of sorts to your self-conscious. Because you want to say, dear self-conscious, dear Allison, I know that you are feeling all of these things. I know that a lot has happened to you in your life that has caused those things. And so I want to help you figure out what it is. And so you say, I feel frustrated because, or in this case, something embarrassing happened. You write, I feel embarrassed because, and you write out all of the things. And it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be coherent. It doesn't have to go together. Whatever comes to your mind, just write down on paper. And it can be any of these emotions or any emotion you feel. It's just, I think you'll find as you're writing that a lot of these emotions are going to tie in together. If you're saying, I feel frustrated, it's because you're angry. And you're angry because you're sad, and you're sad because you're scared. And so a lot of these things will connect back into being scared. We're scared of having people see us in our mortal state, of seeing our mortality and our humanness. But so take time and give yourself 15 minutes. Like, this is not a, I feel grumpy because this happened, and you're done. This is a, I am fully letting out all of these things because I don't want these emotions, I don't want these experiences holding me hostage anymore. I don't want to be stuck here anymore. And so this is a good way to let yourself heal. And then, this is my personal favorite, guys. So after you write all of this stuff down, you tear out with as much force, more force than is necessary. You rip it out of your notebook. You say, thank you for being here, and then you crumble it in a little ball, you stomp on it with both feet, and you burn it. Or you can slam dunk it into the garbage can, because then you get to celebrate after you've chucked it in the garbage can. So whatever way works for you to get rid of it, this is a way to get stuff up, to get it out of you, and to let it go. Because some of these things are going to be buried down clear to your toes, because you've been pushing them down for so long, because you don't want anyone to know about it. You just pushed and pushed and pushed, and so as things are triggering, you might have to ask yourself a couple times, why do I feel embarrassed? Why do I feel sad? Why do I feel this emotion? And then start getting these things out on paper so that you can get rid of them. Any other questions? Katie?
You talked about, with your brain drawing, you talked about tools to create new roads.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tools for blocking off old roads?
What I'm going to teach actually does both.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so let's jump right into what we're actually going to talk about. Okay, so the techniques that I want to teach you are 10 truths and 10 lies, 5 truths you love about yourself, and a daily gratitude list. So each one of these, the purpose of each one of these techniques are to help you stop thoughts the moment they happen. There are other techniques and other things that we can do that help build us up, that help us to kind of, to help us accomplish even greater things. But it's really hard to think about accomplishing greater things if the same patterns are happening over and over and over again in your mind. So we want to just work on stopping what's going on in the moment so that you can cut off that pathway. Because what's really cool about your brain is the minute that you choose to stop feeding a synapses, it breaks. But you have to fully cut off that thought. You have to fully say no. Because anytime you feed it, it's going to take a long time to atrophy. It's going to take a long time to break down and get smaller if you're still trying to feed it half the time. Now, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by that. We're human, it does take time. But it basically comes down to this. You have a drawbridge in your mind, essentially. Well, not a drawbridge, what do I want to say? You have a gate. And you have one kind of input on this side, and you have one kind of input in this side. And so whichever way you decide to turn that gate, you're going to close off one thought, and you're going to let in another one. So you get to choose which line of thought you're thinking. So if this is the positive one, and your brain's trying to speak in your behalf and say, but we're really a nice person, and you say, no, I'm not a nice person. Well, you've just cut off that positive line of thought, and your negative line of thought gets stronger. But if you choose to do the opposite, and you have positive thoughts over here, and you have negative thoughts over here, and your negative thought, you trip out in the hallway, you carpet burn yourself, and you go, ow, that hurt, and then you go, but I'm fine, I'll go get some water, it'll be great. Then you have effectively gated off the negative, telling you how awful you are, and you have encouraged your positive to feed that synapses to grow. So I'm going to explain all of them, and then I'm going to give you a few minutes to actually test them out. And before you go, I would like you to choose one of these things you're actually going to apply. Our likelihood of actually accomplishing our goal is greatly increased if we choose to an action step to do within the next 24 hours. So my goal for all of you is to choose an action step that you will do within the next 24 hours, because you are 90% more likely to accomplish your goal if you choose an immediate action step. So I want you to test them out, see which ones you're more comfortable with, so that you know which one you want to take with you. The first one, it's called Truths and Lies. And I want you guys to think about the Emperor's New Groove. Just go with me on this. So in the Emperor's New Groove, you have Kronk. And Kronk is a fantastic soul who's trying really hard to make good choices. And he literally has a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other shoulder. And throughout the show, you have the devil telling him to do something, generally to go after the emperor, and he has the angel that tells him to choose his better nature. And that's really what's going on inside your own head. Inside of your head, you have voices feeding negativity, you have a voice feeding positivity, and you have a neutral voice. You can look at it in more religious terms and think of, you have devils and not nice beings speaking evil things at you because they're mad you have a body. And you have angels, and you have a spirit that can help you and uplift you and encourage you. And then you have your own voice inside your head. And I want you guys to think about that. Have you ever noticed it? There really are kind of 3 different inputs in your brain. And the one in the middle is kind of neutral because your voice is trying to decide what you want. Once you decide what you want and you choose which one of those voices you're going to feed by listening to them, one of them gets a whole lot quieter and the other gets a whole lot louder. But it's up to you, the neutral party, to choose which one you want. So you take a piece of paper and you're going to draw a line down the middle. And contrary to everything we've talked about so far, you're going to start with the negative voices. And for the next 7 days, I want you to be tracking the thoughts that are going on in your head. And the negative thoughts that show up the most often go over here. So track your thoughts for the next 10 days, 7 days, and then, I can't talk and write numbers at the same time. Write them down here. The 10 that show up the most often for the next week, you'll put on the negative side. And that's okay, because at this point you're not feeding them, you're just paying attention that they're there. Because in order to change things, you have to be aware of what's going on. The biggest opportunity for change is when you realize what's happening. Your eyes are open and you see what's happening. And so this is just a tool to help you understand what's going on in your brain. So 7 days, track it, write down the 10 things that show up the most, and read them out loud. Please be alone for this. No one should ever see these 10. No one should see them, hear them. This is what's going on in your head, and you're about to cut them off. So write down the 10, then read them out loud, and think about, how do I feel about this? Did that feel good? The answer is probably no, that made you feel really crummy. Because a lot of times we think things in our thoughts and we don't think they have any power. We don't think that they have any control. But when we say them out loud, we finally realize how destructive they are. So when you're alone, read them out loud. And then go to the positive side and think and rewrite the negative thing. So let's go back to the example. I always fall down, and so that makes me, I must be a klutz. I don't often feel this about myself, so I'm okay writing it up on the board. So I must be a klutz is on the negative side. So the positive side is I am graceful, because that's what we all, well, I maybe graceful is a bit too much of a feminine word, I don't know, but we don't want to be clumsy, but we're going to say I am graceful. But what do you see here? If these were scales, the positive and the negative now balance each other out. They negate each other. And then what do you have? You have an empty brain that's waiting to be filled with something else. So after you write your number 1, then you say, I am graceful, and then you add 3 other positive things. So in recognizing what's there, you stop the negative. In rewriting it, you give your brain something new to think about, and then in doing the 3 added positive things, you feed the new synapse. You feed the new idea. And so instead of saying, oh, I must be a klutz, I'm awful, I'm horrible, and da-da-da-da-da, I say, oh, I am so graceful, and I'm smart, and I'm pretty, and I'm witty, and if I was singing My Fair Lady, I would also say, and I'm gay. Maybe that's something, I'm pretty and witty, anyway. It all rhymes. So you're putting in your positives, because then you're feeding what you want. So after you've written the 10 positive to counter the 10 negative, guess what you get to do? You fold your paper in half, and then you fold it back the other way so that it's a sharp enough point so that you can rip it down the middle. There's something about doing this with your hands instead of with scissors, because it's kind of your way of really being like, I'm getting this all out, I want none of it left, and you rip it down the middle. And then you post your happy positives on your bathroom mirror, and you tell them to yourself as you brush your teeth. Mostly because that's the only time I have in the mornings where I stand still for 2 minutes. And you take your negatives, and you crumple them into a little ball, and you chuck them in the garbage, or you burn them, whichever works better for you. So that is our 10 truths and 10 lies. And Katie, that is how you stop thoughts and how you feed thoughts, all in one go. The next one. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you can really get in on yourself? Like, other people don't have to lecture you, other people don't have to call you to bear or anything. It's just you just getting down on yourself. And you turn the knife harder and harder and harder, really digging in, I am really awful, I'm really not good at anything, I'm never gonna be good at it, and you just snowball down this path. And so the idea is 5 truths that you love about yourself, these are now your go-to. Think about them, ponder on them a lot, and have them be things that are actually true. Because if you write down things that you don't feel are true, it really won't help you. And so even if you can only have one thing you really love about yourself, okay, lay full claim to this thing you love about yourself. Because as those voices kind of start pounding on your door trying to get in, and these thoughts are building, envision yourself planting your feet, staring at the door, and you're shouting back at the door, I am beautiful, I am kind, I am smart, any of these things. Or, this is gonna sound really silly, guys. So I had, as you saw in the picture earlier, I had really, really, really short hair. Not the best look for me that I've pulled off in my life. And so I started growing my hair out. And so one of my favorite things is my hair now, just because it's so contrary to where I used to be. And that marked a stage in my life where I really didn't like myself. I didn't like anything about me. And I'm at a stage in my life where I appreciate where I'm at. And so just because of those things, that's just a signal to me. That change in appearance is also a signal of a change of mindset for me. And so one of the truths I love about myself is I really love my hair curls now. And so that's when I'm getting down on myself, when I'm feeling really negative, I'm like, that might be true. I don't think it is, but I have really pretty curly hair. And I tell myself that. That is where I go, because that's a place where I feel confident. And so instead of counteracting all of these negative attacks with, well, maybe, you plant your feet, you stand up straight, and you go, no, this is what's true. This is what I know to be true. This is what I choose to feed. And so that's another way to build your synapse. And have those 5. Like, write them down, feel them, and memorize them. So that wherever you are, whatever is going on in your life, you can just say no and counteract with the good. And that's a very rapid fire way to cut off a thought process and to counter with something positive. And then the last one is a daily gratitude list. I never put a lot of thought into this. I mean, even though I grew up watching A White Christmas and listening to Bing Crosby sing "Count Your Blessings" instead of sheep, I grew up around here, so I heard "Count Your Blessings" a lot. I didn't really think about it a lot because it never seemed necessary. Like, I mean, I could say, okay, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for this. Didn't really register why I needed it. And then I learned that the thoughts you choose to feed grow, and that changed everything for me. Because if you are not in a place of gratitude, then you are generally in a place of complaining. And you have to choose to flip that switch in your brain of whether you choose to feed the good stuff or the bad stuff. And I was in a place last year where I was not feeling the good stuff at all. Like, I'm just like, I have nothing to write down that I'm grateful for. And even if I would write stuff down, I didn't feel it. It wasn't really there. And it might not be there for you when you first start. That's fine. Just choose things that you are grateful for. It can be as simple as, I am grateful that my car defrosted today faster than it did yesterday. It could be, I am grateful that I have warm water running in my sink. Whatever it is, just choose 5 things to write down that you're grateful for. Because if you're always in the back of your mind looking for the negative, your brain is going to pull out every negative thing that's going on. If instead you set your brain to be looking for the positive, then your brain is looking for the good things that are happening, and so they start kind of, in my mind, I'm sort of more of a visual person in my mind, so in my mind the good things start glowing. And so then because they're glowing, then I can pick more of them out and they're easier to find. And so as you choose the gratitude, it brings the things that are good bigger in your, they loom larger in your mind so they're easier to see, and so you can see the stuff that seemed small before in a bigger way. And as you complain, if you're complaining about things, you're always feeding your own synapses, because the negativity is going to feed any negative thought that's in your head. Even though you may think they're totally separate and disconnected, negativity breeds negativity, positivity breeds positivity. And so as you're choosing to look for the good, you're slowly starving out the bad. So it doesn't mean your life is going to miraculously change, but how you view what's going on and your perception of what's going on does change. Does anyone have any questions about these? Okay, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes is a really good number. So I'm gonna give you guys 2 minutes to choose one and try one. And I will be around to answer questions as you think through what it is that you want. So, 2 minutes, go.